Ladies and gentlemen, our commander-in-chief, while diseased, is hardly down and out. Since my last episode, Donald Trump's body, like so many in our country, has been plagued by COVID-19. But, like so many Americans before him, he has and will battle back. As Democrats continue their disease-ridden dogma against our democracy, Donald Trump stands tall against adversity and vows that our country's conservative movement cannot and will not be defeated or denied. Today, I break down Donald Trump's current conditions and the measure of his resolve to deny his death to this virus, and the continued democratic despair facing our nation. This is Eric Wright, and you are listening to the Closet Conservative Podcast. On Friday, October the 2nd, President Trump informed the American people and the world that he and the First Lady had contracted the coronavirus. And since then, Donald Trump and members of the presidential medical staff and those at Walter Reed Medical Center have cared for our commander-in-chief around the clock to ensure his safety and rapid return to the Oval Office. And since his diagnosis, the Democratic Party and the mainstream media's liberal machine have circulated and speculated conflicting reports and efforts to distort the truth of Donald Trump's disease. Now, pandering Nancy Pelosi and the run-amok Chuck Schumer have stood before the American people and in every way imaginable politicized Trump's infection and the handful of others within the White House and the U.S. Senate as a means, and only a means, to delay the Supreme Court nomination vote for Amy Coney Barrett. No one is surprised by the actions of the left. Suppose you tuned in to any communist CNN or Madcow-MSNBC newscasts over the weekend, and in that case, you could almost see a shimmer of saliva dripping from Pelosi's plastic mouth as America awaited the COVID-19 test results of Vice President Pence. Thank the good Lord, our nation's VP and his wife Karen reported negative for COVID. Pelosi, third in line to the presidency, along with her fellow Democrats, can nearly smell the Oval like a fresh batch of donuts. Too bad for them. Donald Trump is alive and well and looks to return to the White House, which brings me to my next point. After careful consultation with his presidential medical team, Donald Trump left his hospital room. He rode in his motorcade by the hundreds of his supporters camped outside of Walter Reed Medical Center, and like any other president's past actions, liberal Democrats and the media's gasbags jumped all over this story like a sweat bee on a jockstrap. They cited the complete disregard for the life and the safety of Secret Service agents at the expense of what they call a political photo op. Folks, I'm here to tell you that Democrats and their fellow Kool-Aid drinking communists hate the fact that President Trump felt the need to instill in the American people assurances that both he and his presidency are very much alive. But also find it interesting that earlier this year, the same media outlets speculated that North Korea dictator Kim Jong Un was hermiting himself in hospitals and hotels due to a possible botched medical procedure. Refrained from the public eye, in no way solidified his stance as leader of the North Korean people. The same has been said for former President George W. Bush, who after the 9/11 terrorist attacks made it a point for the American people to see that he and the resolve of our democracy were very much alive and well. Donald Trump driving by in his presidential motorcade was hardly a political stunt, more to the point of illustrating and relaying to the American people that despite the deception of Democrats, he has not succumbed to fear or to this virus. Ladies and gentlemen, as a Trump supporter, but a faithful American and a faithful Christian, I appreciate this gesture. In a time of crisis, it is imperative that our president be, well, presidential and illustrate a showing of strength. Joe Biden and the Democrats have hidden out in the basements, breathing and muttering doubt, fear, and skepticism in their hell-bent efforts to scare their way into power in 2020. Folks, the reason why Joe Biden and the Democrats cannot understand Trump's philosophy is that none of them know what it means to lead by example. In the belly of the beast of his presidential limo, President Trump offered the American people and his supporters hope. Folks, hope is a cornerstone of America. It was hope that cemented our resolve against the British in our fight for freedom. The hope of the Republican Abraham Lincoln ended the Civil War and started the process to end slavery. It was hope, folks, that turned our nation into one body to fight the Imperial Japanese when they killed thousands of our men and women in uniform and thrust our nation into World War II to end their and Adolf Hitler's occupation of our world. Ladies and gentlemen, contrary to popular belief of the left, hope costs nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, all it costs is time, allegiance, and dedication. The hope of Jesus Christ is what allows us to get up every morning and face the devil's deceptive and destructive ways. And ladies and gentlemen, maybe that is what is actually missing in our country. For many Democrats, God is dead. There is no need for him in our lives or in our nation. Humanity without hope is loss. And folks, that is just where our nation is heading under the helm of Democratic leadership. Hopelessness is hell on earth, ladies and gentlemen. And in times of despair and need, leaders must steer us through the currents of troubled times. It is the determination of Donald Trump and the Republican Party and his fortitude of policy, not failure and fear, that will deliver our democracy out of this disease that will again promote prosperity for all of our country's population. Like so many of you, I continue to hold Donald Trump, First Lady Melania, senators, and staff members in continued prayer. Despite cheap political parlor tricks of Pelosi and others, we and the fundamentals of our democracy will not fall into the hands of Democratic despair. We will overcome. We will prevail with Donald Trump reelected to another 4 years. This is Eric Wright, and you've been listening to the Closet Conservative Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. Please remember to give a 5-star review and share our podcast with your friends. The Closet Conservative Podcast is a production of The Liberty Loft. Copyright The Liberty Loft 2020. You can find more shows and information on our website, www.thelibertyloft.com, or any of our social media channels.